Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube and you are you want to get further in, you can click on the little link below, and you'll actually end up in Zoom. Once you click there, you'll see another link that you can get to Makana, and that's where you become one of the producers. You actually drive this show. Your questions and your voting is really defines the entire show. So we really would love to have you come join us over here. If you think that you might be able to answer some of the questions, be part of this illustrious panel. I think today we might be reaching a millennia of experience between everybody that's here. If you'd like to be part of this panel and really share what you know with everybody else, you can come in as early as 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, but you need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to be part of the panel when we do mic checks. The first hour is general discussion, any questions that you have about media or virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we've been working on this our little cooking show, Mad in the Kitchen, and we're going to talk about the audio pipelines. They're pretty complicated, and there's a lot of things going on. So some of the team are here, and we're going to talk through, kind of what we've been working out and figuring out as part of this kind of online Zoom-based live stream interactive event. So, and we'll probably be able to do it again in a couple weeks and it'll be completely different. Tomorrow, Felipe Baez and Stephen Moyer will be here talking about Q Into the Storm workflow. So this is an HBO documentary, and they're going to talk about how they did it online. I think it's going to be a really deep conversation. So, so definitely tune in for that. Thursday, we were supposed to do this last week. We're doing it this week. It was my error. We're going to be talking about working with talent for these online events and for events in general, and how to prepare them for an event. On Friday, we're going to talk about Streamweaver. Andy Carluccio is back talking about Streamweaver and how to pass tons of different signals over SRT to multiple locations around the world. So Andy's going to be talking to us about that and how it all works, answering your questions. Saturday, we used to call it the long day, but it was really kind of the medium day. Now it's the long day. So we're starting first thing in the morning, but the second hour is education, which gets better and better every week. So there's education from 8 to 10 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, Nick Justishin is going to come in, and we're going to be talking about Unreal Engine until 11 or so. And it really just open Q&A and what you'd like to, a lot of us are playing with Unreal Engine and doing a lot of interesting work with it. So we'll be discussing that. Then at noon, from noon to 2, we're doing a test kitchen. So this is where you can play with your setup and kind of work it out. We're working on a recipe that won't be on Mad in the Kitchen for another 2 weeks. So it's us figuring out the best way to represent that and what every step really needs to say, and little annotations and so on and so forth. We think that that's going to be a better solution as we move forward for some of those episodes. Then, of course, at 5 o'clock, we have Mad in the Kitchen, where you can actually join. You can watch the behind the scenes, or you can watch people cook, or you can just sit and watch. So those are all things that are available at 5. Now, we will open that up at about 3 o'clock. So you'll be able to see us, hear comms and you hear us just talking and figuring stuff out. I think it's a pretty good educational opportunity if you're interested in online live events. All right, Bill, what do we got?
We start with Christian Pelving, who is in Sweden and chatting with us. How do you create several Zoom instances, and how do you use them? Can you show screen share? That would be awesome for the regular meeting like this, and also how to use in a studio production environment with many guests on remote.
Well, there's a couple ways of doing that. Of course, there's the AWS way, where you actually build instances that you are going to make available. In our studio, when you talk about a studio environment, we have a PC for every person, and we have 2 HDMI outs that get converted to SDI, and that means that someone can do a screen share. And actually, so when they do a screen share, we get both their video full resolution as well as their screen share, which means we can do picture-in-picture. We can do, cut back and forth between them and whatever they're sharing. So that becomes pretty useful for us. But of course, we're doing it in hardware. Guy might be able to elaborate a little bit on the AWS approach to the same problem.
Yeah, we're using individual instances. We are looking at using Zoom OSC as a secondary if we can. It just depends on the flow. But yeah, we're looking at even using multiple Zoom OSCs. We're actually working with Andy Carluccio behind the scenes to figure out how we can do that, because when you're paying for those machines, even though it's only like $1.25 an hour, you want to maximize them. If you start to get into, 5, 10, 20. It can get pretty crazy, and you don't want to leave them running if you're doing a daily show. If you don't have to.
Yeah, and we're researching doing more. I mean, as Zoom OSC really picks up speed, especially with the ISO solution, we're definitely looking pretty closely at what we can do there. Absolutely. Next question.
Jonas Dautel of Reutlingen, Germany says, for those of you who are self-employed or have been, what would your number one tip for someone starting right now be?
Go ahead, Charles.
The first thing I learned was to make sure you have savings so you can carry over. Let's say save for a week of cost and then build it up to a month and then 6 months and then to a year. So if something does happen, let's say like a pandemic, you could cover your bills if you have employees and your family. And then once you have a year plus or something like that, you can take a part of that money and invest it in something else. And then you continue building like that. That is the first thing that I learned.
Go ahead, Jason.
Wow. Charles's answer was way more practical than mine. I was going to say, don't ever let somebody tell you what you can't do. If you truly believe in what you're doing, just simply don't stop.
Yeah, and let's stay with real practical ones on this one rather than philosophical ones. I just want to keep it really like, what do you need to know? Go ahead, Jan.
Having run my own business for 24 years, the number one thing I would say is you need to have your goals in writing, must be in writing, and you have to have a plan of what you want to do. And the other thing is a lot of things will come into your world, but to be terrific, you must be specific. So stay with your goal and stay specific. Don't get diluted.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, you're going to get your first contract and then you're going to stop doing demand generation. You're going to stop looking for new businesses. So make sure until you're overwhelmed with work, you always set some time aside each week to find more work.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I mean, and even when you get overwhelmed, it's not a matter of getting more work. It's about getting better work. Your marketing allows you to increase the net so that you end up getting more work that you want to do or that moves you forward. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, be available and return inquiries quickly, because these days it's very competitive and you can get aced out of a job just by being 30 minutes late returning a question. Second thing is learn about the tax code in your particular country in the United States. Self-employment tax, a lot of people don't realize there is such a thing until the end of the year when you start doing it, and it could be a big surprise.
Okay, real quick, Bill and then Leland.
I'm going to just emphasize what Nigel said. You have to have two brains, the brain for the passion of what you decided to go into business for, but you also have to pay attention to business. And that means all the things you don't naturally want to do, sales, accounting, all of those things, you have to keep track.
Go ahead, Leland.
Yeah. And I was going for the accounting, and don't make sure when you start that you separate those finances from your personal finances. Go get the business name, go open the bank account, make sure you keep all that accounting separate from your personal expenses.
Go ahead, Carl.
A good way to approach marketing of your own business is to offer yourself to charities, do some charity work. It's a good way to network. It's a good way for people to see what you do on the job.
Absolutely. And the one thing, there's lots of little things that you can do at the very beginning, not the very beginning, but as you get going, that you want to keep track of. Things like lines of credit that don't include you guaranteeing them. And that takes a couple of years to get into. But once you get into that, what you want to do is get that, and it'll be a very small number. Don't worry about that. And then just roll it over. It's something I didn't do. It was very painful. But as I've worked with, I would suggest that. So anyway, and then roll it over a decade, and then you end up with a large line of credit that isn't connected to your house. Next question.
Paul Valus, who's in Austin, Texas, and here on the panel, said, I just found out there is such a thing as a social whiteboard app. In fact, there are at least 4 of them. Explain Everything, Live Board, formerly Real-Time, Miro, formerly Real-Time Board. Is this something we could add to office hours? And he has a note there with links.
There's a whiteboard built into Zoom. So I don't think we need to add anything externally to make it work. We just don't do it very often. But you can definitely draw over things. You'll see some people using Zoom here to do that right now. I think that the way our discussion works generally on a day-to-day basis, if you're not doing it kind of real quickly in front of you while you're talking, it's starts to slow the conversation down, which is why we don't open it up. For larger, longer meetings, I think it could actually make a ton of good sense. Next question.
Alton Christensen in Brooklyn says, teleprompter glass, what am I asking for at Home Depot or at a glass shop? From a practical standpoint, plastic or acrylic may be needed. Any specifics on best options in that case?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't think you're going to find any teleprompter glass at any of those locations. Home Depot, they know window glass. Teleprompter glass is usually about 90 thousandths thick. It has to be fairly thin, and it's fairly fragile because of the refractive index of glass. You don't want it bending the light much because it's at a 45-degree angle. And it's got to be coated with, vacuum deposited with a metallic coating, partially silvered. Usually it's titanium, and you can get these from Specialized. If you just search the internet for teleprompter glass, you'll find a couple of suppliers, and it's fairly expensive, but they will cut it and ship it to you. Look for 70-30, 70% transmission, 30% reflectivity. That's primary indoor type prompter glass. Outdoors or for podium type setups like the President uses with the two panels on either side, it's usually 60-40, 60 transmission, 40 reflection. And that's pretty much the details.
Yep. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Carl.
So I did make a teleprompter at one time, and I did use plexiglass for that, and then I went and I got the overlay, the privacy filter overlay. It's actually where it's mirrored on one side, not on the other. I don't know if this will work in a more professional level, but for what I'm doing, it worked perfect with a Dell monitor right underneath. So,
Yep. The big thing is you just got to think about what you're putting in front of your lens. So as soon as you get into wanting a super sharp image, we move to glass pretty quickly just because it's going to not have as much aberrations as we will with plastic or acrylic. Carl?
So if you're looking at like a Home Depot solution, go to a picture framing store and see what they have in their high quality glass. So they're not Home Depot, but picture framers use very high quality glass for some of their picture frames.
For most of our key stuff that we've built teleprompters for, we've followed Courtney's rules, which is go and get teleprompter glass, which is expensive. For larger ones that are probably a little less mission critical, that are like 55 inches or whatever, we've definitely ordered that from glass shops, not Home Depot, but glass supply companies within San Francisco, and you can go get them, and they'll build them to the size that you ask. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yes, there's one thing if you're just going to use regular glass. Regular glass will work, but remember, it has only about a 10% reflectivity. So you're only going to get about, your prompter monitor has to be pretty bright because it's only going to be reflecting about 10% of its.
And we've been able to order, 70-30, from a glass company, that it just comes silvered. It's probably not the same quality as the teleprompter glass, but it was suitable for what we were using it for, which is just internal training. Go ahead, Craig.
So what do you use for the kits you ship out? When you're shipping out your remote kits, do you send a prompter with it? And what do you use for that? Is it
right
too
now,
fragile to send
No, we're sending the iCan 12-inch portables is what we're using because they fold up really nicely and they pack nicely into a kit. So those are the ones that we're using currently for our kits that we send out are the iCan 12-inch portables. So next question.
And it comes from Craig Kadoki, who is just speaking here in the panel from Toronto, Canada. What does everyone think of Zoom's new immersive view?
Leland?
It reminds me of Business Hangouts from 2012, honestly. I hate to say it, but it's what it looks like.
Yeah, Leo?
Yeah, it feels a little bit gimmicky at the moment. I can see where it sort of works, but I think it's going to be one of those things that was a nice idea, and I can't see it continuing personally.
Go ahead, Sky.
I believe they're trying to keep up with Teams, which is kind of backwards because Teams is actually catching up to Zoom.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you probably don't want to have a feature that the other side doesn't have. I will never, ever, ever use that feature unless someone pays me a lot of money to do it. And I will try to talk them out of it. It is the most horrible looking thing. I mean, it just makes my eyes hurt.
And that will guarantee you to have to use it next week.
Yeah, exactly. So if I'm paid for it, I'm happy to do it, but I would never volunteer it. It's a horrible looking thing. It did look bad when Teams did it. It looks worse. I mean, it doesn't look worse. It just looks the same as Zoom. Go ahead, Leo.
I know we've had discussions about things like GatherTown in the past, and the other ones. There was one we used a couple of weeks ago, which has that same feature, and I hated it for everything that was worse about it. There is reasons that GatherTown has some technology that works the movement between rooms and the movement that virtualization, but taking a virtualization perspective and sticking it on top of Zoom is just like trying to put the two wrong things together. And anybody who can see the picture from Jeffrey, it's like 5 smiling faces. No.
Well, and it's cute when you really try to get all the keys right and everything else, but that's not what happens in reality. I mean, I was watching a little bit of the real-time conference yesterday that I guess is an Epic / NVIDIA, whatever, and it was all these people in front of virtual backgrounds, and it just looks so bad. Like, I'm sorry, but all those edges moving all the time and the contrast problems with the background and everything else. I get that. Like, if we're doing actual talking about graphics, we should step it up a little bit because it just looks horrible. Next question.
Aaron Huslidge of Durham, North Carolina, he says, is it too early to consider an all IP live production workflow?
People are doing it. Yeah. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, churches, a lot of them are getting just NDI and going straight into something like a vMix station and then write it back out to YouTube or their own internal kind of broadcasting RTMP type solution. So it's end to end, IP, all digital, and it works. So yeah, it's not too early at all. It's working now.
Yeah, Leo?
Yeah, I talked about this before. I've seen one where the cameras all have What3 names for identification. So you can literally drop a camera down, gives What3 names, you give that to the remote end, they find the camera, and away they go. And it just makes so much sense long term. Everything when you talk about cloud-based computing, and you sit there and go, why do you want this equipment? Hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment sitting in the back of a truck somewhere when you're only using it for a fraction of the time that you own it.
Well, it depends on how often your truck goes out, but the when I had a truck, for the most part, it was out almost all the time. The main thing is that NDI is still not as stable as it is getting much more stable, and a lot of people are able to produce it. It's not as stable as electrical yet. 2110 is as stable as electrical, but it doesn't have all the features yet. Like, it doesn't have all the tools that you need to work with it yet. But we're seeing those two kind of coming together. Most likely, I mean, in the large broadcasters that we're talking about, in the large facilities, everything's being built around 2110. So NDI is kind of more of a smaller build system, but definitely working. But the 2110 is definitely, we're definitely moving towards IP very quickly. There's still just a lot of translation boxes in the middle of the whole thing to get it all working. Next question.
Liberty White, our show friend in Atlanta, Georgia, says, rebuilding a workstation for streaming and video editing, looking at a 2-monitor setup, what would you recommend as low mid-range monitors?
Go ahead, Jason.
The actual model doesn't really matter. What matters is that the brightness is bright enough to handle what you need, and it handles well. First, it's calibrated, and then lastly, it's IPS, which is in-plane switching, which means you're not going to get any color shift across the panel if you see it off-axis.
Go ahead, Charles.
I would consider making sure, if you're going to do a bit of editing and streaming, make sure that it covers 100% of 709 sRGB. Make sure that you have that covered, at least as a base. At that budget, you're going to be looking at an 8-bit monitor. If you get something with FRC, it'll get you a little closer. It'll mimic the look of a 10-bit. For the budget, I like to use the BenQ 3220Us. These are 32-inch monitors. I use them as my GUI, and as a reference every so often, I've calibrated them as close as I can to my Flanders. Those are 32. If you're looking for a 27-inch, they do have a model that is that size. At that point, I would start to consider a widescreen monitor to cover that. A lot of the editors that we work with have moved on to having a very wide screen as a single monitor. It's made the workflow a little bit better.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I have a couple different setups. I have 3 of the really wide Dell monitors. I think they're like 36 inches wide, but they're not really tall. And that's good for a wide linear workflow. But I've got 2 of the 43-inch Dell monitors that I use for like Moto and After Effects and stuff, just because I can scale up the 4K video really large. I don't know all the back numbers like they do, but they work great. So,
Mickey?
Yeah, also maybe consider the HP Dream Color line of monitors. They're more professional grade, more color accurate line of monitors. And with Asus, they have a similar line called the Pro Art.
Go ahead, Paul.
I don't know if Guy Cochran's in here today, but the guy turned me onto this incredible monitor. It's a LG Quad, and you can split the screen into 4 windows with 4 HDMI inputs, and you can fill the screen. It's amazing. You get 2 of these, you'll be mind boggled. I guarantee it.
Yeah, so the ones that we buy like chiclets are the Dell 24-inch. I don't know how many we have, but we have a ton of them. I have some basic requirements for monitors. I don't know whether that one has it or not. I will not buy a monitor without an HDMI input. I know I say that, and it seems like a thing, but there are monitors you end up with DisplayPort. And you end up converting things constantly. A second is I will not buy a monitor without a VESA mount on the back, and I will not buy a monitor without a C13 input. So I know that there's a lot of color considerations and everything else, but from a practical term, if I can't put it on an arm and I can't just plug a C13 is what goes in the back of your computer. It's like the 3-prong, if it doesn't have those 3 things, I won't touch it, because it just means that I have to deal with something. From a practical perspective, I have to deal with something that I can't manage, on a day-to-day basis. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, the Quad actually allows you to do HDMI and USB and their DisplayPort one. But the cool thing is that you could have 2 monitors and 2 monitors. So even though it's physically 1 monitor, it's like I have my PC in 1 and 2, and then I have my Mac on 3 and 4, so I can move the mouse seamlessly between the bottom 2 or the top 2 with the KVM. I just push a button, so it's pretty cool. It's $599. It's not bad at all. I mean, to have 4 monitors for $599, it's
absolutely. Yeah, I use the little my split, because I still have all these Dells. Is a little monoprice for it's a little matrix that works KVM and matrix for it, but the LG one is smoother than that. Go ahead, Carl, and then Charles.
I've always found using the LG ones, the same panels they make for Apple, they roll their own, of course. Maybe not to the same brightness as Apple's, but they're 24 and 27. The 27 is a little bit expensive because it's 5K, but the 4K 24, they're ultra fine. They're pretty good around the $600 mark.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, and these also have a built-in KVM switch, so you can actually have multiple stations, which is why I got them. And also they have a hockey puck that they call, and you could adjust the brightness on it just by hand, and that gives you a bit of leverage. As the day moves on, you could actually have a better sense of what you're looking at in the brightness. It comes in handy, like instead of having to go to the menu and like change it there, just feel more tactile.
Absolutely. Next question.
Will O'Neill in Alexandria, Virginia says, is there a real tangible benefit for ear monitors for, trying to be very high quality here, Zoom meetings or live events on Zoom or YouTube? Our guests on these systems change every week, so if there is a benefit, I'd have to find monitors that work for everyone. Headphones would not apply.
Go ahead, Jeff, and then Mickey.
The very real benefit is to disable Zoom's noise cancellation or echo cancellation. That's the very real benefit. Getting rid of open speakers will improve your audio immensely.
Yeah, dramatically. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what Jeff said. If you have open speakers, you will not have full duplex connection. So if you have more than one person speaking at a time, they will try to push each other down because it's trying to cancel the echo.
Yeah, we found this for the last decade that it just makes a massive difference to get people off of open speakers. Go ahead, Leo, and then Bill.
Just really on the practicality side of cost of some of these, I've been using the ones I'm using, the MEEs, M6s. I'm using the Bluetooth versions because I like them. They're about $60. The non-Bluetooth versions are about $15. So they are literally, you can throw them in a box and send them and never want them back again.
Go ahead, Bill.
If you're going to be using the same gear for multiple people, though, make sure that whatever the thing that goes in the ear canal is removable and cleanable and durable, and that you can buy extras because you don't want people sharing the same in-ear piece.
Go ahead, Carl, and then JJ.
So Behringer's new line of in-ear monitors come with 6 different in-ear grommets. So you can pretty much, they're almost disposable, and they're like $30 US, I believe, the in-ear monitors from Behringer.
Yep, go ahead, JJ, and then Mickey.
Yeah, I kind of think that the headphones do not apply comment is because multiple people would be putting things in their ear. So having a interchangeable earphone portion, or like I often use, the open ear. So it's bone conduction, and then nothing goes inside the body.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I was about to look for one, but if you want something extremely cheap that is a one-use thing that you can send out to participants and not have to care about them sending them back, you can get a 50-pack of what do you call this, acoustic tube earpieces that are designed for walkie-talkies, two-way communication, and you can get a 50-pack from Alibaba for $150.
Yep.
So that's an option.
Pretty good. Yeah, for us, we mostly send out audio implements stuff, and we want those back because they're a little bit more expensive. But we do buy lots and lots of the earpieces. We use the Christmas tree earpiece. I don't know what they call it, but it's like the flanged earpiece because it kind of, once you push it in there, it really sticks in there and doesn't go anywhere. And so also autos are the other ones that we use that are a little less expensive as far as that goes. But they both have removable earpieces, and you can buy them in packs of 50. But you do want those ones back. From our experience, because of the clients that we've worked with, I'd rather have more expensive ones that I update rather than leaving cheaper ones that I leave with them. But you got to make a decision about whether you want to try to get them back or not. Next question.
Show friend and panelist Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen, Germany is in next with, are there virtual cables with more than 2 channels for a solution to pipe multiple stereo tracks into Mixbus?
Go ahead, Craig.
I've been using, I've been using Soundflower for a long time, which gives you a 2-channel or a 64-channel bus for piping stuff around. I think there's also another one called Black Hole. And although I know it's unpopular with the panel, I've had some good use out of Danté's VIA.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the Jonas is talking about, but if he's talking about something like Loopback, wherein you're just routing between applications, a program like Loopback, you can add, I think, as many channels as you want in a virtual interface.
Go ahead, Leo.
So if he's talking about PC, I'm sure he's just asking this so we can have to say banana and the other models of that's all he's asking it for. Potato. Yeah, so each version of it does add in multiple, as you go up the fruit chain, you get more and more virtual cables.
Oh my gosh, this is such a bad idea. Anyway, Leland and then Jason, really fast.
I was basically going the same place. You just have to buy additional BB audio cables similar to the Danté virtual component. It's the same thing. You just have to add additional channels.
And you have to decide whether you want to cut it into 1-inch strips or 1/2-inch cubes, for the potato or the banana. Go ahead, Jason.
Deep fried.
Oh, that's it. It's covered.
All right. What do you say, Leo?
I would say the way that I actually prefer to do it is take something like a physical mixer that has the channels and push it through and back out again. It actually can work out a damn sight cheaper and more understandable to use something like an XR18. It has to be the 18 or above. But you have to make sure you get the right drivers because by default, it only shows 2 channels.
Next question.
Still laughing. The voice meter tubers and vegetables collection. John Baker of Malmö, Sweden is in next with, has anyone got experience with Rivet for SRT contribution? I'm particularly interested in how the contributors found the experience with the app and service or service.
I think it's something that I want to, in the next week or two, I definitely want to test. Well, maybe we'll get a bunch of us to get together and kind of do a lab. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I haven't used Rivet itself, but there's some other stuff that's similar. We're using right now just vMix or Wirecast to do a software SRT send up, but there's also boxes that you can get like KiloViews that are hardware and then high vision and things like that. And then on the receive side, we use things like SRT mini server. And I was looking at the pricing for Rivet, and it looks like it's about $24.99 a month. Yeah, so some of these can get up pretty quick because SRT mini server is like $999. And then there's some cameras now that'll just have it built in. So this is one of the cool things about IP is, you know, some of these cameras that are starting to come out will have SRT built right in. And so you just send it straight up. So excited for the future as we talk about, you know, IP workflows. And that was John Barker, by the way. Bill Davis,
John.
not Big.
Oh, I'm
He's
sorry
the
about
man.
that. I'm just looking. I've got a whole bunch of first hour tags up here, and I'm trying to manage this.
Check, John, check your Discord. That's all I got to say. I sent you a message. All right, next question.
Jeff Francis, Columbia, South Carolina. Backup stream servers, which services VT, YouTube, Vimeo, etc., and encoders, AMP, support these? How is the switchover decided?
So typically the switchover is actually decided by the player. So the player is given a manifest as it comes in, and it's going, I'm getting good data, I'm getting good data, I'm getting good data. I'm not getting good data. I'm going to go to the other one. And so if it has that, it'll switch over, it'll jump over to another piece. And that is why, by the way, you want to make sure that your primary and your backup is equal quality, which is a mistake we made for a couple of years, thinking, oh, it'll all be primary unless something really goes wrong. But the reality is if the player has some issue, it might jump over, and now it's on backup the whole time. So because it's just getting what's available, and what it does is the way that the manifest works in HLS, which is what most of them are getting delivered as, is it's just looking at, I have a list of the things that are available. This one isn't working, so I'm going to go to the next one. I just go down, just keep on going down the list until I find one that works. And so you have to be kind of, the primary and the backup for that mechanism. You have to be very careful about making sure that they're both high quality, because you could end up with literally half of your audience watching one and half of your audience watching the other. Go ahead, Leo.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. I think the question is talking about between the encoder and the CDN. So he's talking about what you do where you have the primary and the secondary encoding channels, and how does it swap? I may be wrong.
Well, no, but I'm saying you're basically making, when you stream two things from the encoders into the CDN, it just makes those, it then just says these are all available. It's letting the player know that those are available. And so the player is jumping between them typically. I mean, it can jump in the CDN as well if it doesn't, but it's getting a primary and a backup. They're both equal when you start. In fact, one of the things we do to try to make sure that everybody's on the primary is before a show, we'll often turn the backup off for a minute and then turn it back on. And what that does is it forces all the players to make sure that they're all on the same one. As we're kind of going back and forth. One thing to know is that when you put up a still for a long time, the players jump back and forth all the time. Like they just go crazy. That's why stills are not a great thing. Nothing moving with no music causes the players to think that there's something wrong. Go ahead, Jeff.
So follow-up question, can you force the player which stream it looks at if you want to check your backup stream?
So on a public CDN, no. When we're working in Akamai, we have the direct URL. So we can go in and just put it into our browser and go, what is the backup looking at? And while we're doing tests, one of the things that we'll do is when you're doing stream tests, you can burn in text. It can be time code, it could be extra text or whatever, and it'll say primary or backup. And so that way we know what we're looking at while we're doing tests. Once you're not doing tests and you turn that text off, you also have to be careful. If you're doing that in high dynamic range, you can burn people's TVs in. So you have to be very careful of leaving that text on for too long. But that's the thing you want to think about. Go ahead, Jeff.
So in the A10 Mini Pro, you can stream directly to YouTube and other services, and it has a primary and a secondary. Is it streaming both, or is it a choice?
I don't know. I haven't done much streaming from the A10 yet. So if it's primary and secondary, it's technically supposed to be streaming two streams, to the ingest. So, and it's not super reliable because it's coming from one location. So you have a single point of failure, or a SPOF, as we say. So you have a SPOF there that is your switcher. You'd still want two. When we do it, we have two encoders that are encoding, to a primary and a backup. Go ahead, Leo.
I thought it was only doing one, and it's on the failure of the remote end that it flips, but I may be
could be.
completely wrong.
I don't know.
I thought otherwise you're doubling your bandwidth out, and the whole idea was to not do that, but I may be wrong.
Yeah,
I think we need to find out.
It very well could be. And then the other thing that you have to look at when you start doing primary and backup is, can you get a smooth fallover? So when, for instance, you're streaming to YouTube, if the encoders are are output locked, which means that it's kind of like gen locking for encoders, that means that they're building the frames at exactly the same time. YouTube will switch from the primary to the backup without a pause. Like it doesn't lose a frame on the way through. But you need larger encoders to do the output locked outputs. Although I haven't tested it in AWS, it seems like that would be relatively easy for it to do, but I'm not sure. Next question.
Rupert McCrae from Dallas, Texas has a couple of questions. The first one, Zoom has various optional add-ons to their paid pricing plans, like additional cloud storage and large meeting upgrades. They also offer Premier and Premier Plus priority support plans, no pricing given. Any experience with receiving this level of support from Zoom?
I haven't done it. Go ahead, Guy.
I've added a large meeting and haven't added the cloud storage one. That's the one we're toying with to see when they'll call us out on it. We're like 10 times over. But we're on the verge of going from business to enterprise, and I've already gotten some quotes from them. And they've been like totally hand-holding. So when I've made some requests, I've made it through my support guy, and he's been able to push stuff through. So you do get additional, it's more one-on-one, because usually when you reach out to support, the first hit you're going to get is overseas. And then you got to kind of dance to get up to somebody in the U.S. that can really pull some strings beyond just the boilerplate responses that they have in their system. But yeah, you do get additional hand-holding once you get to those additional tiers.
Next question.
Rupert McCrae's second question from Dallas. Zoom Webinar has a practice session feature intended for pre-event panelist prep. It seems it can open the panel before opening to the attendees. Has anyone found this useful?
Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, really useful, but limited, because you want to do that prep. And it's that, I mean, you look at the way we get around it here is that we have the pre-show meeting somewhere else. If we could do it, it would be, you'd hold it there. The thing that's missing is an after show cut, so that when you press stop, you actually can go back into that pre-event, but you effectively remove the audience. At the moment, there isn't a way of doing that I'm aware of.
We've used it a couple times. I mean, because of our structure, because we do point-to-points, we don't need it as much, but we've definitely used it a few times, and it's been good. You can get everybody can work out details and issues before the event begins. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, the thing with doing that, though, say with something like office hours, is that it does need active management in terms of handling the registration for each panelist that needs to jump on. So in our situation, wherein we're sort of an open show wherein anyone can jump in, it's going to take a bit of man hours to handle that.
Go ahead, Leo.
The last thing is, you then make anybody a co-host. They've got that big button to say go live, and then you can see their finger draw to the top. It's like, just stay away from it.
Well, and then the other issue also is that for us, we recommend opening the door for our participants as much as 30 minutes before. So you get into the situation where that practice session doesn't make as much sense, because it's not what you really want is a green room that you can move people from, that is persistent throughout the entire event. To get back to what Leo was talking about, that people can join. The way we do it with our individual computers, that's what we've created. So there's a green room where you go in, you can hang out, and then we can push you into individual computers to actually present. But that green room is persistent because of the way we're using breakouts. But the problem with the webinar version is that you don't have that. You want that green room all the time, and then be able to drag them into the webinar directly as a panelist from that green room. That's what doesn't occur right now. Next question.
Jonas Dattel, our friend from Reutlingen, Germany, says, what did Alex use for playing the Apple video yesterday? I saw some tearing when I watched it back on YouTube.
QuickTime. I mean, it was hacky. I'm embarrassed by the whole thing. I had forgotten to set it up on a separate computer with playback and control and everything else, and I was constantly scrubbing through it, and it was a mess. So it was just QuickTime though. I'm sure you saw some tearing. Next question.
Carmi Vanzafake of Redondo Beach, California, says the Oscars hit a record low of 9.85 million peak viewers. However, that was the highest rated show on ABC in the last 6 months. The NBA finals were 8 million. Is this the end of broadcast?
It's coming. I mean, let's just be clear. It's coming apart, and this is accelerated it a fair bit, but, just people are finding other things to do. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, we are seeing the end of, in quotes, linear production of certain things. We're not seeing the end of good programming, and good programming will always win. It's
Absolutely.
just that the way the watchership of anything is just changing, and it's learning to adapt to that and to produce things that are worth watching. But I think live sports and live entertainment, where it is something like this, where it is a reason to watch, there is a reason to watch.
I come back to the main reasons to watch live, and I think that gets you into linear programming, is breaking news, sports, interactivity. And linear programming has a hard time with interactivity, which is the easiest one to turn on. And sports are, will continue to do well, to your point, as will breaking news. But I think that even then, I think a lot of people are kind of separating out. It's just the problem with linear right now is that it's a generalized solution for a lot of people who now have a lot of custom options. So, they just don't have the same reason to all go to the same place. Go ahead, Sky, and then Bill.
Well, and I'm going to jump on that sports concept. I would be curious to put those numbers up against the Super Bowl or the World Soccer, because that's, again,
no, those are still doing more well.
They would, I'm sure they will, and that's not an unknown thing in the industry in Hollywood, I know. So again, what is the live component in the we don't know what the end could be, because it could change. That's the magic.
I still strongly believe that as organizations and verticals, like brands and organizations, realize they could be their own broadcasters, and instead of spending their ad budget or starting to divert their ad, but they're already doing this. Well, so they're diverting their ad budgets and their event budgets into broadcast. As more and more organizations and brands become broadcasters, it will continue to erode the market. Like, that is the reality. And so it doesn't mean that people won't watch the biggest things out there or use Apple TV or Netflix or whatever, but it does erode the market to a point where it will be unsustainable. Bill, and then Courtney real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for decades, and the term of art in the marketing industry is fragmentation. And it's, when I grew up, we had the 3 networks, PBS, and then the radio stations, and that was all. And now, Springsteen said 57 channels and nothing on. It's now 57,000 channels, and finding what you're looking for becomes the biggest challenge, which is why Google's a monster, because they crack search.
And the fact that all these services provide lots of back catalog, we've been working through Heroes for 3 months instead of watching linear TV. And that was 15 years ago. Go ahead, Courtney.
And I would not use the Oscar cast as a yardstick to compare it to general production, because of COVID, there were very few films released last year, and so there's very little interest in watching an award show, which nobody's seen any of the films that were released. So I think that's one reason there was such a drop-off in viewership. But it's been that specific show. But I agree there is a further dilution of the viewing audience, but I wouldn't use that particular show as a yardstick.
Yeah, and you're right that the erosion's faster there. I think that there was a point where a lot of personalities decided to use the Oscars as a platform for their opinions, and that has destroyed the show. It's why we don't do it here, opinions in those areas, because it destroys your viewership. Next question.
Power tools.
Aaron Isaac of Rochester, New York says, what are you using for the WLM Plus Loudness Meter plugin for the show live input?
Mickey, real quick. Here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm using a window capture in OBS and getting that feed from OBS to Zoom using the OBS virtual camera plugin. And I'm not using the Plus version because the Plus version has processing, which I do not need to do in this situation. We just want the meter.
And we're moving really fast. Next question.
Sky Gleason, Seattle. Courtney said he wanted a Steadicam fly-through for Matt in the Kitchen show. What's the value for a graphics opening as a live video opening for the show?
versus a graphics. So live video versus a graphics opening.
You just want to keep your elbows in, like until that's the thing you add when everything else is working really really well. But I would say no, not right now. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say Steady can be great, but really what you need is a jib for that kind of show, because it gives you so much more 360-degree angle possibility.
Even just a high to a low on a jib is really great. Maybe we'll get one of those at some point.
And my elbows are way in. I'm not pushing for anything.
So
new.
but that would be
anything new.
Unless you have a jib to come down, I wouldn't do it. And we'll work on that. Next question.
Abby in San Diego says, do you know anyone using Cinema 4D on the new M1 Max? If so, how is it working on it? Is Alex here?
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I'm working with a team of designers. I'm art directing, and they mostly have the larger machines, but they bought the M1s just to test out. And there's good promise there, especially with the new Redshift that came out for Cinema 4D. There is a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline. The only problem is the live render preview, since it doesn't have a lot of GPU power, it's a little slow. But for what it is, it's actually pretty good. And what's coming down the pipeline as Apple starts to release their own GPUs, it's very exciting. So,
next question.
Andy Kokendorfer of Viera, Florida says, NDI question, for sources at remote venues on gigabit IP, one company office to another, would anyone recommend NDI or NDI-HX?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, you wouldn't use NDI in that situation unless you were able to really put a VPN to tunnel through, because this is where you would go NDI to SRT with something like bird.cloud and then kick it back, because SRT is made to traverse over the WAN. NDI is for LAN, so it's just for local because of the multicasting and the way that it spits the video to every port basically that it could find on the network. It's not a good idea to try to push 125 megabit per second. So the SRT streams that we're sending that are 1080 P30 are only 11 and visually almost lossless. I mean, it's hard to distinguish the two, especially if you can get the hardware encoders from somebody like Matrox, where you end to end. That would be the way to do that.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what Guy said. But if ever you're in the situation that you have an actual direct leased line between the two offices or a point-to-point wireless link, then you could do NDI. But if it has to traverse the actual internet, then no.
The next thing to look at as you start to, if you really want to scale that up, is a Nimbra. Just Nimbra on both sides. You can research that. All right, next question.
Some guy named Alex L. of Novato, California, whose pronunciation guide confuses me terribly, says, I want to extend a Bluetooth headphone connection with a wire to make it more accessible by audio devices. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, JJ.
I like the Tautronics. These units function as both receiver, sender. So you can put them also on the speaker side if you want to. So that's what I've done it on both ends. So I can sender or receiver.
And who makes that again?
Tautronics. I'll send you. I put it into the Discord.
You got Mickey.
Yeah, you could also get an external Bluetooth adapter for your computer and get a longer USB cable. It's not that long a run, but it can be done. Or you can go the same route with an external Bluetooth adapter that has an SMA antenna connector in it, and you can get 2.4 gigahertz boosters.
And you know who makes those?
I can send you a link for some AliExpress specials for that. A lot of people use it for their send and receive for ZaxNet, the wireless 2.4 system of Zaxcom.
The issue is my new comms thing is this is the Parrot 450, I guess, dual ear that I got for comms. I want to be able to listen to the pre-show while I'm, in the kitchen making coffee. And it can make it, it's supposed to go 300 feet, but through the walls, it doesn't make it that far. And it can make it right to the entrance of my kitchen. But there's like 10 feet of it that are unacceptable. And so I need to figure out how to get it to somewhere in the middle of the living room. Go ahead, Carl.
So if you set up your Apple TV where your headphones there are the speaker for the Apple TV, then that's
and I can share from here to the Apple TV.
Yeah.
Too.
So that's because you can put anything you want into the Apple TV, and then the Apple TV can be placed anywhere you want. Apple TV has pretty good range too for Bluetooth.
Yep. That's a good idea. That's good. Quick one. I'll try that tomorrow. Mickey?
Real quick, just another reason to break out those lectures.
Yes. All right. Next question.
Tommy Chance of St. Paul, Minnesota says, when can we expect the next remotes release?
Victor? Is Victor here? Yeah.
We are heavy in production, and I'm going to say mid-May to be reasonable. This has been a challenging one because the level is super high. So it's going to be worth the wait.
You are going to be astonished at the work these people have done. You are going to be flabbergasted, and I'm scared to death that the video part won't live up to what I've heard, because what I've heard is amazing.
That's awesome. All right, next question.
Pete in Seattle is up next, and Pete says, whoops, did I just, no, there we go. Will there be native support for Danté audio in Blackmagic systems, and anyone see any further development in Danté video?
I don't know anybody using the Danté video, and I doubt Blackmagic will ever support Danté because it costs too much to license per piece of hardware. So I think I think that Ravenna would probably be something they would jump on before they jumped on, and I don't think that they like to externalize that. I wouldn't put it above Blackmagic to develop their own version of that, just to work within Blackmagic hardware before they gave it to Danté, because they have all the hardware and they have the subsystem. Next question.
I believe it's Kjetil Gersvold of Tromsø, Norway, says, we have a Zoom production coming up with potentially hundreds of participants who will be able to ask questions through a chat. Participants should not be able to share video screen or audio. What are some best practice tips for doing this through Zoom or Zoom OSC?
I mean, the chat is keeping all the questions to chat. I would highly recommend when you have hundreds of people. That's what we have. We have hundreds of people, and we keep it to the text, and it allows the conversation to move relatively quickly. There'll be a temptation to want to open the mic, and it just slows down the conversation, and often ends up with things that just off mark comments and questions. And so that'd be my recommendation. You want to make sure you have moderators if you have that many people asking questions. It just depends on, remember that you have to also engage people to ask questions. You'll see us constantly, at the very beginning now, we have a well-trained audience that does it, that trains us, we train them. It's a symbiotic that kind of goes back and forth. Go ahead, Leo.
I wouldn't use the chat if you're having that many people. Use the Q&A section, or use something like Mukana, or as I use Slido. There are better tools to bring the questions in.
Yeah, Slido is pretty widely available. Mukana right now is still kind of a per event thing that takes a little bit of time to stand up, so and a little bit of cost, but we're working on it. Next question.
Will O'Neill in Alexandria, Virginia said, what app or system do you use to run this Mukana thing?
The web, the World Wide Web. That's it. All right, next question.
David Brady has the big question. What's a skosch and how is it measured?
Go ahead, JJ, real quick. We're going to go real fast.
Loan word from Japanese. It means, it's skoshi is the original word, 1950s, and it means a little bit.
I always think of skosch as 1.5 dashes. All right, next question.
Soup's on and a half. Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says, Telestream Cloud Transform seems interesting. But would this be any simpler than using an AWS solution?
It may actually be a front end for AWS. So like I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if their cloud solution is sitting on AWS. It's probably simpler, but it'll be more expensive. I mean, you can definitely build those tools inside of AWS. It's just time versus money. So I think that it'll be less expensive for you to do it yourself, but you have to know how to do it. Next question.
Jonas Dattel, Reutlingen, Germany, said, Tucker, do you have a favorite hosted VPN server? Ideally, it should run on a Pi. I brought that back from earlier because Tucker's back with us.
That's a good question. I use Hamachi a lot. I use I don't do very much with Pis, so it's probably, I'm normally into FortiGates and some of the higher end professional solutions. So.
Next question.
Alan Snyder, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, says, my son would like to get into voice acting. We have debated about how to do this. Should one start by taking theater at college or skip that and start with a voice coach?
Go ahead, Bill.
You should start by telling him to read aloud every day. Does not matter what he reads. He can read the want ads out of the newspaper. If there's still a newspaper around, he can read the ingredients list on his cereal box. Voice is muscles. You must develop your muscles first and foremost. So sit down, read. After 2 or 3 weeks of doing that, a couple of 15 minutes a day is enough. because you'll get tired. Then you need to start listening to yourself back and understanding where your flaws are, correcting them. That is the step one process for becoming a voice talent. You have to do it over and over again.
Good, Carl.
Find some royalty-free cartoons from like the 60s. Re-record your voice over those lines. Put that up on YouTube and get feedback. So it's important that you show other people and get feedback.
Good, Courtney.
All those suggestions are very sound, and learn another trade to fall back on.
You know, the big thing that for me, I mean, I grew up in a family that I think some of this comes from family. You're doing lots of voices. I think all of us and my family does lots of voices of things. You want to look at things, inanimate objects, people, anything that you see, and think about what that voice would do. You know, like, and I think about those all the time. I have little voices for everything. And so, but I think that going back to some of the other suggestions, you'll sometimes hear me in meetings go into them. I try not to, but I've been doing that since I was a kid. So the big thing is you just want to do a lot of it. I would highly recommend, whether you go to theater or not, I would highly recommend for voice acting, which is different than voice talent. But voice acting, I would highly recommend going to a coach. I went a couple times, and it really just broke up a bunch of pieces of concrete in my head about how to do that stuff, and it made a massive difference in how I produced what I did. So I would highly recommend playing with that. But a lot of it is just you have to, at some point, figure out how to get out of yourself and into the character, and that's the thing that just takes a lot of effort, and it takes effort to make it effortless. Next question.
Aaron Husledge of Durham, North Carolina says, has anyone used the JVC connected cameras? Any other recommendations for cameras with SRT or NDI?
I've always had complaints about the JVC sensors. So it's just been one of those things that a lot of us just have never gotten over. They just they skimp on the sensors. And I think nowadays, when there's so many sensors that are done so well for so little, I think it's hard to justify the JVC ones, no matter what features they put into it. Go ahead, Guy, and then Tucker.
Yeah, when I took a look at this at Cinegear, I spent a lot of time, a couple hours in the JVC booth, just really looking at this camera, and the image just reminded me so much of like the older Canon series where it just looked video-y. For $27.95, I was like, yeah, I'd rather convert it. And they do have the bigger ones, which are like $17,000, which are the connected cams. Even those are just 2/3 inch.
Yeah, even at the larger sensors, I just can't get over the quality. Yeah.
Tucker? 2/3 inch. I mean, you got to throw a broadcast glass on there.
I will say, for all the trouble that Oscar's had, I did really like Super 35. That was a nice look. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Mickey, real quick.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend getting a dedicated SRT encoder that'll run on a battery and mount on the back, because then you're paying, every dollar you're paying is for the quality and the streaming ability. Right now, the JVC, it's one of many features. They've probably spent, I'm going to guess, less than $150 on that function. So
yeah, Mickey.
Exactly what Tucker said. Teradek, Magewell, Bird Dog, they all make products that could encode into SRT or NDI. So buying a separate device also allows you to more easily upgrade your camera body without having to think about that whole infrastructure yet again in the future.
Next question.
Joshua Kuhn of Spartanburg, South Carolina says, for those that work with for themselves on the panel, are you doing outbound or cold marketing to pick up new clients? What works? My work thus far has been 100% word of mouth, and I don't want to run out of that without being prepared.
I am constantly engaged in what I'm up to, in my community. This is one piece of that. But how do I serve the market that I'm in? How do I think about helping people around me with those things? And that's my entire marketing. Charles, and then Bill.
I second everything that Alex just said. Get in touch with the community that you're trying to get involved in. That's the best way you get to know the people. They have connections. They will connect you. Also, if you're working with a producer, most important thing, make the producer look good. Do the best that you can as fast as you can. Make them look good. When they go to another job, they will remember you.
Yeah, trying to show off at a site or a work site and over top of your producer is really not a great way to get more work. Go ahead, Bill, and then Courtney, real quick.
Every human interaction you have for the rest of your life is going to be a sales opportunity. So have something concise. People call it an elevator pitch or whatever, so that you can talk to people and then just talk to people. And don't concentrate on what you can do, concentrate on what you can do for them.
Yep. Go ahead, Courtney.
If you're just entering the market, befriend somebody who's doing most of the work in your market, because sooner or later they're going to get booked up and they're going to need to refer it to somebody, and referrals are a good way to expand your income.
And if someone brings you into a job, never cross the line of letting a client cut them out and go straight to you. It's the end. It's like just so you know, like that's the reverberations of that. If someone brings you in as a client, if someone brings you into their client, it's their client forever unless they say it's okay to do that. And you can have I've had situations where people said, hey, the client wants to work with me directly, and I'll say it's okay or whatever, but you want to ask and you want to be willing to not do that. And I've turned down millions of dollars of work because it would cross that line. Like I do not cross that direct line, because it's a death knell to what you're doing. Let's go to the next question. We're running out of time.
Bill Alexi, Fort Worth, Texas, says, has anyone had to adjust their audio to match levels after updating to the latest Zoom version while using original sound? Any recommended settings? And he's using Vimeo Live.
We find that almost weekly. So like there's the way the levels work are not standard on Zoom, and I think that they're just constantly updating what they're doing. And I don't know if it's weekly, but probably every other week we find that the levels are slightly different. That's why we do mic checks every morning, is to error correct for things that are changing within the system. Next question.
Jeff Francis says, Final Cut question. Final Cut 10, is there a keyboard shortcut for adding transitions other than the standard dissolve, such as fade through color?
Yeah, Bill, real quick.
You can set your default transition. It starts out as dissolve, but that's in the menu. So look online and look for change default transition.
But then you have more than one.
Oh, do you have more than one?
No, that is the default transition, but you can put one of your odd transitions on, then select the transition, copy it, and you can paste it wherever you want. So you can have a little temporary timeline with 5 different transitions on it. Just go pick the one you want, copy and paste it on that intersection of 2 clips, and that way you can use as many transitions over and over again as you like.
But yeah, there's no shortcut. Next question.
Tim Cooper of New York says, I've been out of video editing for over a decade, but getting back in. I used Sony Vegas in the past, planning to use DaVinci Resolve now. Any suggestions on training courses or resources?
Go ahead, Charles.
I would check out the guys from Ripple Training. They were here a few weeks ago. They were great. I would watch the videos that we did here. We answered a lot of questions that you might not think about on your own. So I would do that for the editing and intro to color. If you're getting really deep into color and want to get into the color science of things and the white papers, I would check out the people from Color Lab. If you want to break your brain and the white papers and all that jazz, I tend to hang out with them pretty often.
Yep. Go ahead, Roscoe, real quick.
I double down on what he just said. Or YouTube is very searchable. So if you're looking to how to do a very specific thing in Resolve, just go search on YouTube. You may find a really good short tutorial.
Yeah. I do think that the Ripple training is probably the most condensed when time matters and you want to just get an overview where everything has been organized. But to Roscoe's thing, I fill in gaps all the time on YouTube. Next question.
Ernest Floyd of Bastrop, Louisiana says, I've got to work on Saturday while Matt in the Kitchen is on. How do I listen in and watch the different rooms?
With your iPhone, you can just jump in, join Zoom on the iPhone, go into a breakout, and listen. We don't have broadcasting that out working just yet, but we will soon enough. So stand by for that. And I think we had one more question from Leland Best before we jump into that. Go ahead. Last question.
Okay, it's down here at the bottom. Leland says, hi, has anyone looked into the signal processing stuff by Windows audio device drivers settings within Zoom?
I'll make that perfectly clear. If you go to the audio settings now under advanced, there's a switch on the second page that's available at the back end. It says signal processing by Windows audio device drivers, which is set to auto, and it can be turned on or off to obtain raw audio. So I was curious if anybody's tried that setting yet to see what happens.
Tucker.
I'm on a new build right now that does not have that set, but the way that you had been hearing me for when I was on for quite a long time had that function enabled, because it's actually been there for quite a while. It's when I say enabled, I had disabled all the processing. It was raw audio.
Okay, thanks. But have you experienced any real change in signal processing coming through Zoom, whether it's a benefit or a detriment to the process?
I turned it off. People said I sounded good. I didn't consider from there.
Okay. All right, cool. Thanks.
All right. So now we're shifting gears to talking about the audio from Mad in the Kitchen. It's become complicated chain. so we felt like we're going to have an open discussion to it. I don't know if anybody has built a graphic for it yet. I think we're figuring it out so much on the fly. It's like every Saturday we're still going, oh, I need this, I need this, I need this. I think Tucker might have a screen grab of the actual 806. I think that's the closest to a graphic that we have that will show you the view of the process. But does anyone want to give an overview of kind of the overall audio? We'll jump into Tucker first. Go ahead.
Okay. I can show the 806, and Alex, if you give permission, I'm happy to show a live view, or I can go in and actually look at some things in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yep. Cool. I'll do if I can get screen share, I'll show that here in just a minute. Effectively, we'll talk about the challenge first. So the challenge is that we've got Unity is functioning for comms, and it's my Unity server that's in Las Vegas in a data center. So that Unity server is operating for comms, and comms, you've got party lines that are specific for general production, audio, and then party lines that are groups, basically to talk to multiple rooms, multiple PCs, we'll say. And then we have party lines that are specific, effectively point to points to each individual Zoom, which gets you into, it's basically the IFB function for each of them. So Unity Connect, Unity Intercom into Unity Connect, all of that audio is fed into Unity Connect that's in the 090 Studios, or 090 Studios. And inside of 090 Studios, that audio is being piped into an 806, a BSS 806 processor. In the 806 processor, we've got a set of mixes that come from a Yamaha console.
And just real quick, like the 806, the Unity Connect pulls it's just the interface that pulls everything out of Unity, the Unity comms, makes it available over Danté. The 806 is basically a nodal compositor for audio. You can process it, you can route it in many, many different ways. It's extremely powerful, and we're still learning how to use it, but Tucker knows how to use it, unfortunately. Like we just got it, and then we handed it off to Tucker to set it up. Now go ahead, Tucker.
And it's Andy here. If it helps the discussion, I can talk about the Yamaha end.
Yep.
And I've got the QL editor up for that if it helps with the
Perfect.
visuals.
Perfect. Yep, absolutely. So we'll definitely jump to you, Andy, when we get to the QL. Yep. Go ahead, Tucker.
All right. So here is the 806. So inside the 806, we've got the red section on the left-hand side of it is the Danté inputs. So I've broken them out by function. So we've got this is from Yamaha mixes. This is from Yamaha Q and program. Down below that, we've got from Unity Zoom Room PLs. So those are like specifically the point-to-point PLs. If we go down below that, there's General Comm PLs, which is a handful of basically giving access to anything. Because what we're into really quickly is basically the initial ask was, hey, we need some mix minuses. Cool. Then we got into the Friday rehearsal, not last week, but the week before. And it was very fast-paced requests and basically, okay, cool, manually building connections and mix minuses and things as the time went on, which I think went really, really well. And then from there, I took the notes from that and basically came and rebuilt the system entirely to enable a lot more flexibility. And the flexibility is basically where you can come in here and you can say, like, this is a source selector. And you can basically,
I hate to interrupt, but could you make that window a little bit bigger on your screen so we can actually see the text is being pixelated pretty bad
it's jumped through. I can make it a little bigger. Is that better?
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Appreciate it.
So basically we've got source selectors that allow whenever the 090 team needs to make an adjustment, they can come in and they can say, okay, like this is actually a really good one to take a look at. Sorry, it's latent because I'm connected to California. So if I zoom in, and I cannot make this window larger, I apologize. Basically what we have is we have 1 through 16, and that is the effectively the PCs in the system that are acting as Zoom rooms, and each one has a drop down list, and in that drop down list we've got mixes, so mix 1 through 16, as well as those program feeds. What that allows is you can basically decide what is the fullback input at this layer, and then you come down and you select what is the interrupt input.
And by the way, for everyone listening, this is going to drive questions, and so feel free to ask those questions. We're not assuming that you know everything that we're talking about. You can definitely ask everything from what is a foldback to what is, what all those things are fair game. We're trying to kind of get everybody up to speed, but we're gonna go at a pretty high level unless you ask questions. We'll assume you know everything. All right, keep going.
Apologies. Yeah, and I will.
You don't have to explain it, Tucker.
Okay,
you don't have to dig into it. Just keep talking about what you're doing. I'm just letting people know if Tucker's saying things that you don't understand. That's why we have a Q&A system. All right, Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, so basically the way that it works is it's kind of like a buffet. You come in here and you say, okay, I want this to be the foldback input or the mix input, which is the normal program input for the system for each PC. And if we look here, it's going to be hard to see because, again, it's pretty small. But room 8, mix 8, is actually feeding program left, where every other one is effectively feeding or being fed by a standard mix, which is Andy building mix minuses. So and that's because mix 8 is what feeds the production room, where what you want to hear is you want to hear the actual program taking place, and then you want all intercom traffic to interrupt over the top of that. So whenever Alex makes a call or Andy makes a call on intercom, you get to hear that, and that's what gives you the Mystery Science Theater experience in there. From there, we've got groups. So the groups is a function that Alex brought up where he said, hey, I'd really love to have the ability to have a single PL that is an aggregation of some specific rooms. So tying all the talent together, putting them on one PL, allowing him to talk directly into them and hear them as an aggregate back. So it basically frees Alex's intercom up a little bit more as we build that out.
And this is partially because of limitation of Unity, which is that you can only have 6 PLs per page. It's not something I was used to. So when I made the request, it was kind of like, I'm used to ClearCom letting me have as many PLs as I want or as many connections as I want, and I can't do that here. How do we compromise and find something halfway in the middle?
Yep. And it's still in development. I mean, we will make adjustments as we need to. One of the things that I've done, the ultimate end state is that there will be basically each room will be a tab or a cell on a screen, and you can make a selection from a drop down for what you need. But I've also chained, well, I won't go too deep. So here you make your group selection of what rooms are in a group. That does a function where it combines the mixes and the interrupts to enable the ducking at the next stage, which is here. The ducking takes the mixes and the interrupt and combine and basically creates the actual IFB function and feeds it back out to the PC. That's the basic
and that
level
Ducker
of what's
has
happening here.
that Ducker has functionality as well. So if you open that up, you'll see that it's got its own. So when you see those nodes have their own processing built into each one of them.
Yeah, if I open, like this is basically we have level control throughout the system. We've got the matrices. We've got, there's a lot of stuff happening in here. And one thing I've done is just kind of a courtesy fun thing is I actually bring, for the groups, I'm running the groups, this is those ABC groups, through an auto mixer, which makes it a much smoother experience for Alex on his end, because it's actually balancing those out. So you don't, it's taking away the big calm fluctuations. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on here. But
So that's the 806, and that has been key to us being able to route and process and everything else, what we're doing. Before we go to questions, we're just going to jump to Andy. Andy, you want to talk a little bit about the QL?
Sure. Let's see where to start. Maybe I should share my screen. That might be easier.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to just share each window at a time. That way it'll be big for everybody. So let me find the inputs here.
And even for panelists, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them into Makana. Make sure everyone can vote on them and keep everybody on the same path. So, and then we'll jump into questions after Andy discusses, unless Mickey wants to add any notes.
Yeah, and I need to turn off my sends on faders here. Hold on one second. Where is that button? There it is. Okay. Oh, I think you're seeing 9 through 10. Hold on. Give me one moment here. I'll figure it out. One more time. Ah, here we go. Okay, so here's channels 1 through 16. So when I do the show, I'm actually not looking at all these channels because they're grouped. So Madeline's channel, for example, she's in Zoom Room 1. This is Zoom Room 1. Zoom Room 2 is here.
And you're in the mixer right now, right? This is are you logged into the mixer from your house?
I am not.
Okay, so we won't see it.
And at some point I would like to do that. And I'll get Brian's help, but this is literally the preset the scene I was using.
Yep.
For the last show. But anyway, so and let me switch these back to mix. There we go. That'll probably help. All right, there we go. So this is Zoom Room 1, these two faders, and they're grouped together. Zoom Room 2, 3,
and in the mix, what people are seeing is the different channels that are available in that mix. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to mention that when I mix, I actually create a custom fader level. I don't need both of these faders. If I just have Madeline's fader here, and the next fader is the chef, the guest chef, if I bring this up in that custom fader, it will bring up this other input. I won't see it because I don't need to see it. So the Danté patch is straight across Danté 1, 2, 3, so forth and so on. This mix here, and here I'll show you on mix, where it sends on faders. There it is. I don't use the editor a whole lot. But anyway, okay, we're going to look at her. Mix minus is here. So it's everybody, it's sending to everything except her. So that's her faders. I'm not sending to herself. If I go to Zoom Room, if I go to mix 2 that sends to Zoom Room 2, you'll see it's everybody except Zoom Room 2. They hear Madeline through that, so forth and so on. That's basically the input path. I'll show you. I don't think I can just explain. Inputs, the second layer, 17 through 32, picks up the last two Zoom rooms, 9 and 10. We've got some playback on there for both music and video. Alex is running the opening video off a hyperdeck. I have those inputs coming to me.
And that hyperdeck is using Danté. So we have basically analog to Danté converters, pigtails coming out of the back of the hyperdeck, and it just gets immediately converted to Danté, and then is sent back to us via over IP. So it's nice and clean as far as that goes.
Okay, and then we've got let me get rid of this here. Okay, here are mixes, pretty straightforward, and I try and keep things simple because if I get hit by a bus, I want someone to be able to come in and mix. And in fact, what I've done too is that Brian Maddox really created a lot of the structure in the mix here. All I've really done is gone in and relabel a few things. And the mix is tweaked a little bit, but not a lot. Obviously, I'm doing EQ and compression a little differently than he would for the shows that he does for the needs of the cooking show. So those are really the big changes. Here are the mixes. This is just literally Zoom Room 1 through 10. Pretty straightforward. Here they're not sending to any matrices, and I'll show you the matrices. Let's see. Let me stop the share again. And I'll show you what I'm doing on the matrices. This is something that I do differently than Brian. It's a preference thing. I wanted to keep it really simple. So the program, my program output is the left, right, main of this Yamaha. And so I want to always have program with meters right in front of me. That's why I do it that way. That's very common among a lot of mixers. Brian does it a little differently. And here are the matrices. Wait, are you seeing the matrices?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You are?
Yep, we see matrix.
You do. Okay, good. So there's two, here are the left and right records. Those are a set of matrix outputs. ATEM, which is our switcher, that goes to, I would call it air.
I'm not
so
sure.
to speak.
I guess we're seeing mix on the matrix. I'm not sure you're talking to the same thing we're looking at.
Oh, hold on. Let me just make sure I'm really. Let's see.
No, I think Andy, you had the right thing.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I didn't get the green box around it, but now I see the green box. Okay, so so here I'll just show you. This is what you send to that matrix. I'm sending the left and right to the matrix, and the matrix is the last thing in the line. So these record outputs are feeding the record path, which is beyond me. I don't know what is in the record path because it leaves my room at that point. And then the ATEM is our switcher, so I would call that air. And then this is TD speaker. This is literally a speaker that's in the central control room that allows Kevin, our EIC, and JJ's in there as well with him to hear program. This to me is the simplest way to do it. If I pull program down, they don't hear anything. And then they're like, why don't I hear program? So that's why I do it that way. I wanted to keep it really simple. If for some reason in the future, and who knows, we may do this, if Alex said, hey, I want to send music to air, but I want to keep rehearsing, I would actually just create another set of inputs on the board and send those directly to these matrices for air and just pull them down when we go to show.
Yep. Okay, go ahead. And Jeff, go ahead.
So on that screen, Andy, we're seeing that your record feed is clean and your air feed gets some dynamics processing on it. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. And we can, I don't know if I can't, oh, no, I can just turn them off. Yeah, I don't know if I can show those, but yes.
No, it's okay.
Well,
and then what you're giving to the TD is a mono sum with some dynamics processing.
yes. And, probably the dynamics, I have to go look at this dynamics processing again, because we've been going at warp speed here, but these are probably just to catch the loudest peaks. We're not really doing any compression. I would say it's more peak limiting for this, for these outputs.
Mickey, do you want to add anything before we go to questions?
Yeah, I think like in what my role has been so far in this in the project has been more of a go like to relay information between, specifically in the audio side of things, between Alex, between the participants, between and with Tucker and with Kevin and with Andy. Like say last Saturday, people mentioned let me get the terminology right. The home chefs mentioned that they want to be able to continuously speak with the other chefs. So I've been like translating that sort of layman description of what people want into, like say, telling Tucker that translating that into the mix minuses should be on pre-fader sense as opposed to post-fader sense. So that's sort of been my role, just being the link between people.
And we are going to start codifying this more, but really this has been in kind of a gel as we every week we get up and everyone kind of looks at it and we all figure out more of it. So this is kind of the introduction. I think it'll be, if we do this at the end of the show or the end of the first season, we'll have a different pipeline or slightly different pipeline as we move forward. Let's jump into the questions. Otherwise we'll run out of time.
Tommy Shantz in St. Paul says, is there a graphic, basically a chart showing the audio pipeline?
Not yet, but we're going to start working on that. As far as, there's the 806, but there's not a full pipeline of this built yet because it's been moving so fast. It'd be hard to put it in there, but we should have it in the next couple of weeks. Next question.
Marty Audius says in Silver Springs, Maryland, I haven't been able to join the cooking shows on Saturday, and I'd like to catch up on the back-end production progress. Are they being recorded?
They are being recorded. We're not going to publish them. Oh, they're not being recorded into the breakout rooms. Yeah. So right now we don't have a mechanism for that to record. So they're not yet. We are going to probably figure out a way to do that by episode 5. So probably 2 more episodes of this, and then I do want to start recording some of those, but we don't have that set up yet. No, Mickey is recording some of the comms, but I don't think they're synced up with everything. Right, Mickey?
No, it's just been comms.
Yep.
No, just audio, no picture. But we can work with Kevin to get that running with a hyperdeck, perhaps.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
James Babbitt in San Diego says, "Hi Tucker, please explain the fold back and interrupt inputs."
Gotcha. It's a great question. So when you hear people talk about IFB, IFB is made up of 2 things. It's made up of what does the talent or the person's typically talent want to hear 90% of the time? What do they need to function appropriately, which is typically the other talent. That's a very much an A1 task of Andy is putting together very specifically what each talent wants to hear in their ear while they're actually in production. And then the interrupt side, so it's called IFB, interrupt foldback. The interrupt side is whenever the producer or Alex in this case wants to talk into them and give them a cue. So it's basically a combination of a mix or a foldback and that interrupt.
Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle says, Matt in the Kitchen has 5 interactive audiences. 1, the show to YouTube. 2, the chefs to Madeline. 3, the Zoom rooms. 4, the crew to each other. What is he missing in terms of the 5th interactive audience?
I'm just staring into the face of the sun, looking at all of these charts behind the scenes that I knew it was complicated,
right?
but Andy and Guy and Tucker and
this is why we hang on to audio engineers really carefully, and we it's audio is much harder than video, as far as figuring out the routing, because you have to visualize it. There's nothing to see. You just and it's so easy to stack things the wrong way or get them going, and so it's a really difficult pipeline. And this is when you see what we're doing with the 806 or what Tucker's doing with the 806 right now. You see why I say comms are half the show, is because the comms are way more complicated than the actual audio for the show. Go ahead,
and
Mickey.
Without the physical space, we don't have the conception.
Yep.
You used to be able to walk into a room and see a 64 channel mixer, be impressed, but now it's just this mythical voice at the other end of an audio speaker somewhere.
Well, and one of the things that we spend a lot of time in is we absorb the complexity for the end user.
Yeah, there you go.
So you'll find that that's why the 806 and everything else. What I want is our central control to basically do all the work, and that's why I'm maniacal about no extra apps for the end user. No, they can join with whatever device they pop into, and the comms will come back to them, and all the things will be done for them, because that reduces the points of failure. I have control now. I have control over their experience. As soon as I start sending them secondary things and other things that they have to do, they get lost in that and they get distracted. It means they're not present during the show. So we want them to be able to just turn it on and it works. And it gives us the maximum amount of flexibility in that process, is to put it all into that hardware. Go ahead, Mickey.
Thank you.
And yeah, in terms of producing the show, say what goes out to the show itself on screen, it could be anywhere from 1 to maybe on the larger super sources, 5 video sources. But with audio, we're working with anywhere from, I think on this show, anywhere from 16 to 64 different audio sources that are constantly being worked on by Andy and Tucker, along with some of the automations that the BSS is doing to feed out to each single person,
BFF?
The BSS.
BSS 806. That's what Tucker was showing.
Thank you.
It's a 1U piece of hardware that just has an enormous amount of power built into it. And we had options of getting the larger version or the smaller version, and I was just like, we'll just get one, buy once, cry once, and it just solve it. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I just wanted to make a note for those who are watching this who haven't done a lot of audio work at all. You go to a regular concert and you wonder why there is a front of house mixer and why there is a monitors mixer. You're just seeing that blown up into the steroids of an incredibly complex matrix of different people needing different things at different times for different purposes, and why audio gets so complex so quickly. And it needs separate brains focused on pieces of this to get it right.
Well, and I think that the big thing is that when you get this right, it just really refines a show. When we talk about, one of the reasons I wanted to show this, and we usually can't show any of this because they're shows that we can't show, but because Matt in the Kitchen allows us to be a little bit more transparent, I wanted to use this as an opportunity for people to realize, as we start thinking about these giant virtual events, which are only going to get bigger than what they are now, we need to understand these kinds of pipelines extremely well, because this is what makes and breaks the show. Let's go to the next question.
Kyle Hammond in Chicago says, you mentioned doing a sound check for comms on Unity. Can you walk through how that would work?
Yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
With regard to Mad in the Kitchen, this is all very, I'll tell you how we do it. So basically what happens is, in this case of last week, Mickey is moving into each talent room, and each talent is basically isolated in their own Zoom space, their own breakout room. Inside that breakout room, they get their primary feed is that one feed from the BSS. So what happens is that Mickey goes into a room. We talk on the direct PL to make sure that he can hear that party line. As soon as we confirm that he can hear that, we put some music in. And the music is coming through the foldback side, not the interrupt side. We do another check and make sure that foldback is ducking appropriately. He can still hear comms. Once we know that that's functional and then he talks back, I make sure that path comes all the way back into my server, back into the system. Once we know we have bidirectional and on that direct PL, we move to the group PL. Same test, validate the exact same things. Once we're done with that test, we move to the all PL. Because there's 3 layers of, I can talk to you one-on-one, I can talk to you with the other people that are like you, and then I can talk to all of you. We validate that all 3 of those are functional, bidirectional for all, and then we step out.
And remember, this is for every show. This isn't like this is like the setup pattern for it. And people who like a lot of times when people are having trouble with their audio or things fall apart in shows, it's because they set them up and they don't have this, and then they try to do it a half an hour before the show, and they can't figure out why it's not working. I mean, this is hours before the show of multiple people that are kind of setting all of this up and making it work. Go ahead, Leland, and then Mickey.
And I just wanted to expand on the same question because Kyle and I were kind of asking the same question at the same time. With regard to mobile devices, which we see a lot of in comms, a lot of people just connect a set of speaker headphones and a small mic on a wire to talk with us. How are you dealing with inappropriations there where the device isn't working right, or if you have to get some more signal? I know we can boost the dB levels on those devices slightly in the comm software. What are you finding is the best method to get mobiles to work good?
And you're talking about using Unity on a mobile?
Yeah, for Unity comms, usually I'm typically earbudded in with a cell device, and then everything else is over cuff so that I can just hear the program as it's intended to be. And I tend to pipe program out with the same Unity system through a PC app, but I'm constantly running into people on comms that you either can't hear or their devices just don't work well, obviously. But
we had this problem.
Other adjustments you can make.
We had this problem on the last show because I didn't have those controls with ClearComm. That was all centrally controlled. So I just kept on telling someone, well, my audio is going into the computer just fine. Well, it turns out Unity has control over your output audio, and mine was for whatever reason turned way down. And so I was coming in really low and Andy was coming in really hot. And so what we're gonna work on for the next one is actually doing comms mic checks, where we go through and we hit a meter and just make sure that all the comms are near the same volume. It also, what was problematic is that I kept on trying to set it to Vox, which would be, basically it only turns on when I'm talking so that I can, but it wasn't activating because my volume was too low. So that's something that is yet another set of tests that we need to do before the show.
What time in the day? Where is that in the sequence of time? What time of day?
That'll be 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yep. Mickey?
Copy.
Yeah, in terms of simplifying the system and getting people lined up relatively close level wise, I would typically, like with Unity, recommend that people just stick with Unity's automatic gain control because it does have that function. But the thing with that though is that it only really works well when it's a non-fancy audio system. Once you start complicating the system, you really have to dial it in manually. But with mic checking our comms microphones, we can either find a solution wherein there is a metering system that is within the 090 facilities, or I can possibly pipe it into a meter on my end. And I don't know how I would be able to feed that back visually to everyone, but either way, we need a metering system that's either with me or at 090 to do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
It's pretty straightforward on the 806 to give you an actual meter that's sitting there for every PL, or you could do a specific check PL, or just use production for it, but give a slow meter that's there. That's okay. We're looking at that. That's not hard. It is a matter of just talking through it. Once you, and this is one benefit to having an actual comms A2, is that on the back end, Unity did add the ability for me to go in and adjust levels. And so typically I go in and I'm listening, and I'll usually let somebody know, hey, can you bump up or down? But if the production's ongoing, I'll go and manually move those to get people at a relatively good level. So
yeah, go ahead, Mickey. Oh, there you go. Let's go to the next question.
TJ, I think this might have already been answered. He asked, what is a foldback? But I think that was pretty much covered when Tucker described setting it up. Yep. If so, we'll move on to Jeff Francis. And Jeff's question is, are you doing audio processing in the BSS 806 or just routing?
Go ahead, Tucker.
Predominantly routing. The only audio processing is a little bit of gain control and a little bit of the automatic mixing just to smooth things out for Alex on his end. Otherwise, I don't do any EQ. I don't do any limiting. It's really, at this stage, it's a matter of just get the audio where it needs to be and give us manual level adjustments. So,
go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, from what I saw with the breakdown that Tucker has shared to us, the processing that's currently happening in the BSS is just solely for utility purposes. Any of the more creative decision processing is happening within Andy's board.
Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, Andy is doing anything that needs to sound sweet, and that's one of the reasons it goes through the Yamaha is that those mixes back to those people get to be sweetened by Andy, by the A1, his job is to really sweeten things up. And then the anyone that's hearing something from the BSS, none of that is production audio, except I guess the fact that it's going into room 8 for that. But otherwise, it's just utility comms audio.
It can do a lot of processing. We just don't use it that way.
Lot.
Yeah, and the powerful thing about the BSS is that you can attach all kinds of odd little things to your surface where you could turn things up and down, or you can attach an input. There's many different inputs that they make all over the place, and you can attach that input to any of the controls there. So you can have like a little knob that would make it more bass or less bass or more compression. You could build knobs that would do all of that and just wire it into the BSS. It's an amazing. I mean, it's one of the most amazing boxes I've ever seen. I didn't know what it was, and Tucker suggested it. And then I was down in LA, and someone had one. They're like, "Oh yeah, we run the whole studio on that." And they started showing it to me, and I was like, "Okay, I need one." It's a Sky.
Tucker mentioned the term room 8, and I think that might be a completely different conversation about how many rooms we've got and all that. But again, I'm still kind of in the dark about how many Zoom rooms we have and why.
Right now we're using 8 rooms, for what we're doing. We have 9 and 10 are the extras. They're just backups at the moment. So 1 through 6 are our participants. So we have, we have obviously Seattle, and then we have the guests, and then we have the 3 chefs. And Mickey, go ahead.
Marisa is in Zoom room number 3.
And Marisa's in numbers. Yeah. So we have Madeline, the guest chef, Marisa. Then we have the 3 home chefs. Those are the 6. And then we have the 7th one goes out to people watching the cooking, right? They're watching, that goes into the cooking breakout room. And number 8 goes out to the production behind the scenes breakout room. because that's getting comms as opposed to program. And so those are the 8 different rooms that the audio is serving. And what's interesting about it is that the Zoom room that has 7 still has two-way communication with all the other rooms that are there. And theoretically, you could do it with 8 too, but I don't think we do that right now. So but 7 can talk to, so that way that Madeline can talk two-way to everybody in the Zoom room cooking. So it's pretty slick little setup. Go ahead, Tucker.
So you're doing a loop back.
Yep. Go ahead, Tucker.
There we go, unmuted. I was going to show this real quick. So this is something that kind of one of the things that we struggle with, because we're all basically volunteers on this thing, is that we struggle with getting input prior to basically the rehearsal day to get these systems built. So one of the things that we've been working on is putting together basically, this is all the rooms: PC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Can you make that bigger?
Sort of.
Maybe. Sorry. Thank
you. I think if you hit Command plus or Control plus or whatever, it'll just force the.
There you go.
There we go.
So basically what we're looking at is, and this is literally, probably 6 hours old, but is basically saying PC 1 is for Madeline, that gets mix 1. The interrupt is going to be PC 1 interrupt, very normal setup there. It gets, and then what groups is it a part of? All IFB and talent. PC 2, and then also what are the multi-views? So this is, the goal of this is so that Hanson and I both get the information we need to be able to work earlier in the week to put this together and not have to have a big discussion about it. So
next question.
Thank you, sir.
Mark Inturo is up next with, when the show went live, I was in the production breakout room and there was very little comms chat. Did we hear everything? Are you really that quiet when the show is running?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One is that my comms were too low, so there might have been things that you didn't hear. Number 2 is that because we're not cutting cameras in the traditional sense, there just is less to do. And number 3 is we're still putting out fires, as we get the system up, because we have I have very little setup time, and so we're still getting things are getting better as far as more support for getting data to me earlier so that we have time to kind of set up the board. But a lot of times I don't have time to set up the board until Saturday. So by the time we hit the route, I'm pretty still in it, and so I'm not as communicative that I should be. We're working out those issues right now. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Sky.
It also, whenever, I don't know how much is actually being handled by you and Andy and other people, it feels to me like you're actually you're doing all the switching and you're running all play out. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And in that
so those are things that you would normally,
it's all internal.
It's all internal. And what happens is that I tend to, if I'm doing it internal, there are reasons to call it out at times. But otherwise, it adds chatter to the comms that you don't need. I mean, I used to do it where every time I cut, I would go ready camera 2, no matter who was listening, because I just wanted to keep that going. And I just have moved away from that over time, just because no one's listening. No one needs to hear it when I'm going from location to location. But you will hear me say notes to people like, someone needs to go faster. I need you to cut to this, and I try to keep it so that it also, when I do it that way, it keeps it from being a humdrum where people can tune it out. If they hear something from me, it means that I need something. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, and to your point, traditionally, I'm used to having a show caller following the run of show and calling it. And do you think we would ever get to that point? Because then you've got you've got live switchers in the field, so you've now.
Yeah, I mean I think that we are.
I'd love to do that job.
Yeah, right now it creates, to me, we don't need that. So here's the thing.
Agreed.
When you're doing a big stage show, you need someone to call all of that. When you're doing a discussion, what we need to do more of is rehearse the open and the close and have a handful of things. After that, it's really about just managing the discussion. Like how do you get into the show and out of the show, and then it's a discussion.
Yeah.
Every cue in an interactive event where we're answering questions and we're discussing things with chefs and everything else, it's the host knowing where they're going. Now that eventually may be Marisa more than Madeline, allowing Madeline to be more talent. the main thing is that you want to get all the pins that you think you need for a run of show start to become anchors that kind of hold your show from growing and it being interactive. We're not stuck in 44 minutes or whatever, or 1 hour or whatever. We can make this as long as we want. We can go as shorter and what we want to do is be flexible. And we found the best events when they're interactive is just to kind of flow with it and have a great conversation, much in the way you see, like if you watch Mac Break later today, we don't have a run of show. We have a series of things we want to talk about. Leo is literally just going from what he thinks is the next thing. There's a hard open, hard close. There's, we know that we all have a pick of the week, but that's it. And so you want to get to that point where it's a discussion. You do have to figure out how you're going to get in and how you're going to get out. And this show's the same way, where we're just we have some very, very basic structures of what we're doing. And then after that, we're letting it flow and it'll make it much more natural. And then when you have someone like Marisa who can be, and this is getting out of audio, but when you have someone like Marisa.
Not at all, because her open
again,
comms and I'm hoping you will be coaching her, sir.
Right. Yeah. We're working on it. Yeah. So anyway, but that's the thing we want to do is, and that's where comms makes the difference, where I can talk to her. What I want to do is get to a point, and the reason you want that separate person is I want to be able to have Madeline continue to have a conversation with the guest chefs and everything, and the home chefs, where I'm giving what should be happening is that I should be via comms telling Marisa things that need to be done. Like, hey, we need to pull this up, or hey, we need to go over here. And you want someone who's not in the conversation getting those notes, who can then inject that into the show, as opposed to right now it's hard for me to give comm feedback to the talent because they're talking, and so that's the thing you have to kind of consider.
She's open to having.
Oh no, I know.
In her head.
I know.
Okay, bye.
Yep. Tucker and then Leland, real quick.
Yeah, there's two kinds of shows. There's follow the leader shows, which is kind of what this is, and the thing that makes, and then there's highly produced shows. The thing that is fantastic about what Alex and Sky and the team have done is the fact that they recognize the fact that in order to have a show that feels this free running, it takes rehearsal, and they're doing it, which is money.
Yeah, one of the big things is we're pushing for more and more of a full rehearsal the day before, and that gives us a whole lot of ideas of what that works. The other thing is you have to have the comms at this level when you are going to freeform like this, because we have to be able to error correct between what we're doing, and you have to have it highly scripted if you don't do that, because you have no way to correct. Next question.
Comes from Mickey here on the panel.
We're gonna move really. So just so everyone knows, we're now in like fast mode. Go ahead. Next question.
Mickey in the Philippines. Andy, would you be open to remote participants to feed dialogue microphones on one channel and effects microphones on the other channel? If so, can we work with the participants in setting that up?
Maybe someday. In the meantime, what I would like to experiment with is actually people using lav mics instead of headset mics, because I think I'll pick up more of the frying sounds in the pan and the chopping from a lav mic better than I would from a headset mic. Something we just have to play with and see if it works better.
The hard part that we found with lav mics in kitchens is that there's a lot of hard surfaces, so it gets really roomy really fast. So that's just the thing we'll have to. But I'm happy to experiment with it. I think that actually John Idelson's those little Rode Go's just clipped on actually work pretty well. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I've got a bunch of lavs and Rode Go's. I can mic the knife, the pan, the cutting board. What else you want?
We'll keep playing with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Your sync mic isn't working.
Okay, we're going to keep moving. Now, next question.
Andrew Moyer, Oakville, Ontario says, why not just take a mono input from each of the Zoom rooms?
Go ahead, Tucker.
We do.
Yeah, there we go. Next question.
Charles Klein, New York City. Alex, how do you select group A, B, and C? And do you view all of the video feeds from that selected group?
Go ahead, Tucker.
He says, hey, Tucker, will you please put this person in group A, B, or C?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just make requests. So I'm the complainer in chief. All right, next question.
Marty Atias, Silver Springs, Maryland, with a computer for each participant's connection. How is KVM being done? Is there a monitor, keyboard, mouse set for each PC? Is there a KVM switch, or is there a remote desktop connection for each one?
These are all Zoom rooms. So each one of them is a Zoom room, and then they can be administered from either a tablet or the web. The web is unresponsive half the time. So we've turned found to be much buggier than the actual tablet. So we've kind of gone back to tablets.
They fixed that yesterday.
Oh, did they? Yesterday? Oh my gosh. It was like last week. It was a real problem. So go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, and it's being Zoom rooms, they're pretty hands off after Hansen has done all his magic. So Hansen does his magic and then he steps back and they're pretty.
Yeah, we don't have to do anything after that. Next question.
Mark Horner in Seattle says, how do I listen to comms during Mad in the Kitchen?
So you join the Mad in the Kitchen link that we put into the email every morning. Join, register, and then join us. We'll open it up at 3 o'clock so you can listen to it. You can just listen to us setting up and talking. That's where most of the comms happen, is between 3 and 5. But what you do is you go in and there'll be 2 breakout rooms. One is for the cook along, and the other one is for the behind the scenes. Go into the one behind the scenes and you'll hear comms. That's how that works. Next question.
Andrew Moyer, Oakville, Ontario. With Madeline's dynamic range, how much compression or limiting are you applying versus others?
Oh God. Yeah, she's all over the place, and it's tricky. So I actually added more compression to her. So normally I wouldn't do this much because Zoom's already doing some. We can't use original sound on her because we have an open speaker. We'll get to that if there's time in this discussion. But yes, I'm doing compression on that, and I would like to get her a better sounding mic.
We call that a feature.
And we'd like to get her an IFB. Like the open speaker is kind of devastating for us. Go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, I think it's also important to note that Madeline is coming through a Rode Go wireless system, which has auto gain on it. So you have multiple stages of dynamics that's going in there.
We can't fix everything on our end. Next question.
Leland Best in Corona, Michigan, and here on the panel how are you doing mic checks for comms prior to each event, and how would you level a mobile device being used for comms? Could be answered alongside Kyle Hammond's question.
We covered that before. Next question.
Andrew Moyer, what does Alex's Unity interface look like?
Looks like any other Unity interface. There we go. That's a basic one, except I'm using it on a Mac, so I have it sitting on a computer, and I have a Mac Mini or whatever that's just dedicated to that and the switcher. I am going to separate it out because having both of them on the same computer has become unworkable. And then I have a Stream Deck that keeps that one page that I need most of the time available to me. Next question.
Hasmuck here in the panel from Cape Town, South Africa. A follow-up on Sky's question regarding the number of Zoom rooms. Is the same meeting or webinar, if any of the two, is it one meeting, webinar, and the rooms are created in that one Zoom event? And is this a meeting or a webinar?
So for the individual participants that are coming in, there is one meeting that they all, that meeting's here, and then we have breakout rooms for each person. I'm not very good at drawing this yet. And then our Zoom rooms connect to this breakout room, and then when the person comes into the meeting, these are just talent, we throw them into that room that makes them that connects them essentially to the Zoom room. That way, they only have one link to worry about, and we have control over where they are. And so that allows us to kind of route them as needed. Now, in a larger show, you'd have the main room, and then you'd have a lobby, and then you have hair and makeup, HMU, and then you have the green room. So they kind of go this way. Then they go into the individual ones. So that's another way to kind of think about that. Now, next question.
Courtney has a question. Basically, he's talking about Madeline's audio signal, and it gets kind of crushed and clipped. And I think we just discussed that. We probably covered that enough, do you think?
Well, go ahead, Courtney. What's the question?
Just, I wanted more of a discussion. I agree there should be a lavalier. I think with a headset mount mic, her mic was too close to her mouth, and she was exceeding the maximum SPL of the microphone. Yep. Or the input, more likely the input of the Rode Go, which doesn't have very good, all FM mics have to be compressed to avoid going out of band, and so either direct wire or
Guy has it.
Can control.
Guy's offering it. Yeah, let's give it a shot. We should definitely use it.
4071.
Let's bring it in. Let's drop it. Let's drop it in. Let's see how it looks. If Guy's willing to bring it in, what I'd like to do is try to use it in the rehearsal so we can hear what these are. Hear how they sound in there. But I think that you're absolutely right. All right, next question. We're going to keep moving.
Felipe from Prague, Czechia says, I would like to volunteer as a crew member for Mad in the Kitchen. How can I be part of this?
I'm going to put out a questionnaire tomorrow, so it'll be for volunteers. I'm just going to put up a Google Doc that people can fill out, and then we'll announce it there, and then people can decide. I'm going to ask what areas and what you're interested in and where you are and all that other stuff, so we can just get a sense of other people that might want to play. I think we want to use this as a huge learning opportunity. So, really, even if you have very little experience, we're looking for people that might be there for tests and to sit in the rooms and to test them and stuff like that to get started. And if you have a lot of technical experience, we'll want to know what that is so that we can use you properly. So like Felipe. so it'll be, but I think the goal is for all of us to keep using this as an opportunity to learn as a group. Next question.
Hasmuk is interested if Mickey can explain the audio routing on the MixPre that he sets up before the show as the guest chef's setup.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, real quick. What I set up for Hasmuk was essentially 3 different mix buses on the MixPre, which is kind of difficult with something like a MixPre. So one mix bus was feeding out to Zoom. Another one was for the Mianti's own monitors, and the last mix bus is for Hasmuk's own monitoring, which included both the Mianti's mic and also the return from Zoom.
In a little box. I'm sorry. I'm still impressed with those boxes. I mean, they're just like the little boxes that does a lot. So it's great.
It worked so well and it was so impressive. I just told Mickey, don't explain what you're doing. Just tell me what to do because we didn't have much time.
we need Oprah. MixPre for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question.
Jeff Francis in Columbia, South Carolina says, Andy, are you using pre-fade or post-fade sends for your mix minuses?
Everything's post-fader.
Yep. Next question.
Ronnie Hofsey of Tromsø, Norway. What Unity intercom licenses would you need for this Blue 806 scenario?
Go ahead, Tucker.
You will need, obviously, however many users you're going to use. You need the I/O license. You need expanded channels and groups, and that is enough to get done what you need to do. I always highly recommend that you get advanced program feeds as well.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And Tucker is also using Unity Connect to get the feeds from his own Unity intercom server into 090's facility.
Next question.
JJ McKenna, Santa Venetia, says, does Unity Server allow direct control of the remote units? As Tucker described changing levels of the comms during a live show, would manipulation of Alex's levels have modified the input at his computer or phone?
Tucker?
It has very limited access to controlling what the end user is doing. That's one of my biggest, please, and I do that very often to them. Please go to Unity's, go make a request to those guys because I would love that.
Next question.
Ronnie Hofsey, back from Tromsø, Norway, says how to handle simultaneous real-time voice translation between several different languages in this Mad in the Kitchen live scenario.
Go ahead, Tucker.
This is actually how I got started in all of this. We did a project with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and it was Unity to bring translators that were all over the world in and back to their home studio and getting that fed out. So Unity's a fantastic solution for that.
Really, all of this began because that was the first time you used Unity, right? That was like
I had played with it a little bit, but that was the first deep dive.
Yeah,
and I went all the way.
That was like a little early project within office hours. Yeah. So and then Tucker took it all the way. All right, next question.
JJ McKenna, Santa Venetia's back with at what point will season 2 training start for the folks who plan to stay with Mad in the Kitchen for longer than the remaining 6 shows at least?
Right now, be part of so the first thing to do is to watch, listen to those comms. So it's just an amazing experience, in my opinion, of if you have the time on Saturday to sit there from 3 o'clock until 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, you can listen to all the comms. You can watch the show, and then we spend an hour and a half talking about the show and about the stuff and answering all these questions. And it's an open-ended conversation. To me, it's the way to learn how to do this stuff. So the first thing to do is to do that. If you think that you have skills that you'd like to contribute, that will help you learn and get to be part of a crew and everything else, then fill out the form tomorrow and you can start putting your hands on it. Cook, being a cook is contributing to that process as well. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so me and John and everybody else who was in for the home cooks, what room were we in?
What room were you in for us? You were
You know,
in
when we were waiting during that time, we could hear comms, but I couldn't hear comms like what you're talking about. I couldn't constantly hear you guys talking. I could
No,
only
you don't hear that. You only hear that if I talk to you. If you're in the kitchen, if you're actually cooking, we don't want to interrupt you with
No,
that.
but during that downtime, should we leave that room and go to another room to listen to all that?
I would stay focused on being on the show.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's different experience. Next question. We're almost out of time.
Diogo Nucha, Barcelona, Spain says, is Marissa on Unity and can she cue Mad?
We would tend not to have talent cue other talent. It's just it invites an open mic situation that we'd like to avoid. So we would probably not do that. What we would do is find mechanisms inside the show for her to cut in and ask a question and so on and so forth, which we're still refining. Go ahead, Mickey.
There is a way to interrupt Marissa's IFB, so people can talk directly to her. But yeah, we don't want to have talent.
We're also working on
comms.
introducing her to Makana and giving her training on that resource as well.
So the idea is that as we move forward, she'll be able to take a question. So she'll be able to. We're kind of moving her role a little bit more into the being able to talk to the Zoom chefs about how their experience is, and kind of representing that a little bit, as well as being able to look at Makana and see all the people that are watching the Zoom chefs, be able to ask questions, and have her be able to relay those to Madeline as well. So that's part of the mechanism.
When you say Zoom chefs, do you mean John or
no? Those are home chefs.
Those are home chefs.
Yeah, Zoom chefs are the group of people that are not in the general conversation. Yeah. Next question.
Mark Horner, Seattle, Washington, says, where is Andy Lipnick located? I love how people around the world produce Mad in the Kitchen.
Right now, Andy's in our office.
Yeah, and I'm in the office because, it's like a, 40-minute drive for me, and it just makes more sense. Now, I could mix from here. I have a QL1 sitting over there. I'm not quite set up for that, but I would love to get there maybe by the second to last show, maybe.
We're 100% behind that. We already have, Brian already mixes shows in our facility from Savannah, Georgia. That connection has been done. So we're happy to jump on that. We're probably going to try to do as little tech changes after episode 4 as possible. So that'll be, because we're going to try to have 5 through 8 be as clean as possible. So the experimentation is going to be heavy in the next 2. And then after that, only really serious thing. We're not going to keep on experimenting. Only serious problems will be addressed after that. Next question.
James Babbitt in San Diego, please discuss the IFB instead of the open loudspeaker in Madeline's kitchen.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
We discussed in the first hours the multiple reasons why open speakers are bad for web conferencing. But another layer within this production is that we are also feeding comms into that loudspeaker, which is really bad.
Yeah, comms into loudspeakers just terrifies us. Go ahead, Sky.
Would you do it wireless? Because she's all over the place. Okay, so that requires more road goes or what?
One more. That's what I've been using. That's why I have 2 road goes.
Double. Okay.
Yeah, I go both directions.
All things are possible with time and money. Got it.
Yep. Go ahead, Tucker, and then
instead of another road go, get something that's better for her mic and use that road go as at the other end.
Right.
Sennheiser?
Well, that would be like a Sennheiser or a
So
something.
I've got the old G3 for her mic.
You'd have to just test it in the facility. Go ahead, Mickey, real quick.
Copy.
Yeah, I would definitely go with the G3 for her microphone as opposed to the Rodeco, and use the Rodeco as her IFB wireless feed.
Yep. Go ahead, Hosma.
Yeah, well taught by Mickey. So that's why the guest chef had a IFB through a Rodeco. Just cuts out all speaker noise.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Mark Truro, can you open the rehearsal on Zoom for us to watch so we can learn?
Not yet. So we'll start opening rehearsals. My plan right now is to episode 5. We'll start to open the rehearsals so you can listen to them. I'll be honest, they're just too messy right now for us to do that. So we're gonna once we get it a little bit of a groove, we'll do that. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, definitely. When there's a lot less fires to be put out, because at the moment in the rehearsals there are some possibly security issues because we're sending meeting IDs and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But we're talking about it within the rehearsal, so
Yeah.
we'll have to tighten that up first.
Yep. Go ahead, Hosma.
You definitely including the guest chef in the rehearsal.
We're going to do that all the time. Yep, absolutely. Next question.
JL in the Philippines says, any recommendations for budget-friendly bare minimum equipment for streaming or Zoom meetings? A light, a green screen, camera, mic, or whatever should be considered as the bare minimum. Thanks.
Because we're running out of time, and this is really, in the second hour, please come back and ask that question tomorrow. We're happy to answer it. We just won't have the time to answer it properly right now. No, next question.
Deborah Woodfork of Washington, D.C. When will we get an updated or new Zoom office hour Zoom invite when the current recurring instance ends on Friday?
It'll happen sometime this week. You'll just get an email that says it's now open for another 2 months or whatever. I do it at times because people freak out. Like I got a whole slew of emails on Monday. I canceled Monday, and suddenly they're all emails like, "What happened to office hours?" I'm like, "It's just the evening session. It's not all of the sessions." So because of that, I don't just make it a year long. Because I know that as soon as I quit it, I'll get 100 emails of if I wanted to change it from some other place. So these are like I put it out, but it'll just keep going. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, at least now we're extending it for months at a time, as opposed to early on where it was, okay, let's extend for another 3 days, 4 days.
I know. Well, I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to do this. And now it's like, oh, I'm going to do this forever. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks so much. Great second hour, great first hour. Great work by our producers, asking great questions and keeping the conversation going, giving us a format. Otherwise, we'd be just dangling in the wind. And great job by the panelists. I think we continue to tighten up our answers and our process. And so great work there. And really fun second hour. Thanks to Andy and Tucker and Mickey and everyone else that contributed to the conversation. Really fun. And so tomorrow Felipe is going to be on. He's going to be talking about. It's going to be another deep dive. So definitely check that out. And otherwise, I will jump into the post show. All right. See you.